Welcome for those of you who are brand new. My name is Ron. You probably heard Diva refer to me. Hey, I'm your lead pastor for 3 more Sundays. Are you up for that? How about that? Yeah, I know. You're cheering that. No, never mind. I hope that's not why you're cheering. Anyway, we are just so privileged to be here. And as Diva said, we have a lot of stuff going on as a church. God is doing so much through us. And this morning we're going to celebrate some of the things that God is doing. I have two brief segments where I'm going to teach you, and then kind of a third one that will lead us into communion. So you're going to have to listen quickly because I'm going to give us context for what we're doing. If you've been coming here for a while, you know that we sent a team of about 15 people down to Mexico. And we're going to bring 3 of them up here on the stage. And we're going to celebrate what God did through them and has been doing through us as a church in the San Quintin Valley of the Baja Peninsula of Mexico for more than 20 years now. And then we have a very special guest who's going to talk to us about the Global Leadership Summit. So to start with, point your eyes toward the screen and let's read something that Jesus said. Jesus said, it was one of the final things that Jesus said to his 12 closest followers that we often call the 12 apostles. He said, as you are going into all the world, be preaching the good news to every person God created. It's very clear that Jesus never intended for the good news to be for a select few. He always intended the good news to be for everybody. And if you were wondering when you walked into church this morning, do I belong here? Am I welcome here? The good news is because Jesus is for everybody, you're automatically qualified. How's that feel? That's the way it's supposed to be. And later on, Jesus said to those same guys, you will be my witnesses, telling people about me everywhere. And just in case they didn't get it, he said, you're going to start in Jerusalem, which is where they were sort of headquartered. Then you're going to go throughout Judea. That would be like the county that Jerusalem was in. And then he said, you're going to go to Samaria. That would be the neighboring county. And then he said, you're going to go to the ends of the earth. Now that's a bold statement made by a guy who was 33 years of age and had only been a pastor for 3 years. That's pretty big, don't you think? Here we are 2,000 years later, and in every country across the face of the globe, there are churches meeting in Jesus' name. How about that? That, my friends, is awesome. Yes, that deserves some applause. That's how Jesus does things. For us as a church, part of our taking the good news of Jesus to the ends of the earth is this wonderful valley in the Baja Peninsula of Mexico called San Quintin Valley. And we went down there 20 years ago just to help in an orphanage. And a few years later, we decided to build a house for a family that was shelterless and very vulnerable. And we had no idea what God had in mind for us. We went down to build a house just to be nice and kind to a family that really needed help. Little did we know that the husband and the father of that family, God was going to call into ministry, and we would be able to help establish a church in the San Quintin Valley called Puerto de Cielo, which means the gateway of heaven. And that God would also place on that pastor's heart a vision of building a center for kids that were too poor to go to public school. Imagine that. And a place where they could come and be taught, and it's called Every Kid's Hope. And that God would partner us with another organization right there in San Quintin Valley called Dorothy's House. And you're going to see some pictures in a minute of Dorothy's House, but it's a shelter for abused women and children where they are kept safe and they're taught life skills, and then eventually they go back out into society and they're able to make a living and provide for themselves. And oh, by the way, we often build houses for people who graduate from Dorothy's House. It's such a wonderful partnership. So, we just sent 15 people to Mexico, and I'm going to invite 3 of them to come up here because I have some interview questions to ask them. But while they're coming up, this is Gordon McGee, Angelin Rosenberry, and Dan McNamee. Would you welcome them to the stage, please? And Gordon, I'm going to put you on the spot.
You do know I didn't go this time, right?
I do know that. But I'm going to put you on the spot because we're going to roll some pictures. And you have been connected with the Mexico mission for a long time. So would you give a brief summary?
1991.
You've got to put that up there.
1991. Is this on?
Now it is.
Yeah, almost 30 years, more than 30 years.
That's awesome. So we're going to ask you to narrate the pictures.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
And just a reminder to all of us, God is blessing us for 10 minutes. All right, here we go.
See.
That was 10 minutes.
All right. I guess Ron didn't want to do this part. Hey, I guess that's our team because I wasn't there, but that looks like them.
That is our team.
Where are you guys? Are you standing near the house you built, or?
In the back corner up there.
Yeah.
That's the house, that's completed house.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's the completed house.
There's the front door there, yeah.
There you go. All right, next picture.
All right. Pile of wood, a bunch of people on a saw. Typical Mexican neighborhood where people are picking the berries for Driscoll. You'll see those Driscoll berries in your store, but this is where they're picked. Field workers make $13 a day for a whole day's work, 8-9 hours. Then they often have a little piece of property, and if they're, able to show that they're going to stay in the area, they can go and enlist to get a house built. Oh, look at that. My goodness. Actual carpentry taking place by novices.
Yeah.
Wow. What a fantastic thing. The roof is going up. Look at that. I love it. How many days did it take you guys to build that?
We were almost done in 3 days, but
3.
3.5.
Okay. It's a record this time. And then, of course, you always bless them not only with some interior, fixtures like a table, beds, and a little kitchenette that you build with a sink and a gas-powered stove, but you take them to the store and supply them all up, which is really cool. It's always been a special thing that New Life has done that a lot of churches don't do. All right. Looks like you're handing the keys over. That must be Mamacita and her. She has one child or?
Her grandson.
Grandson? All right. All right. Was she from Dorothy's?
No.
No.
No? Yeah. All right. Hangout time. Fire pit at Bill's YWAM base where we stay in the cabins. It's a great place. Anybody who hasn't been, you should go next year. You'll be blessed. Oh, we got to go back one. So that's the church. The first floor is the church that we built down there. The project, I managed the project and the fundraising for the last 2 years. The church just got built. We took a team of guys down in February and built the house on top. And this is where Pastor Luis's family lives now, on top of the church. We left them a really cool design for stairs, but they just took the ladder we made and flipped it around. And when the team went this time, we sent enough money to pay off all the land under the church, so it's 100% paid for. And there was enough left over to buy windows and doors for the first floor church. So that's great. It's awesome. I couldn't be happier with that fundraiser. Yep. That's,
It's Pizzole.
yeah, Pizzole, okay. And that's Pastor Luis and his wife Irma. They have 3 children. And understand Irma made food for you guys all week.
All week. Amazing.
Wow,
Amazing it was.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous. Yeah, that's Dorothy's house up in the corner, and then the view from upstairs, probably from their coffee nook. Just a couple of years ago, there wasn't a second floor. That's ministry has been very blessed and has just helped a lot of people. Yeah. All right. Smiling faces. I love it. So you guys had a good time.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, we did.
All right.
I think that might be it.
That might be it.
Yeah,
Good, because I wasn't prepared for that.
that's all right. You can hand.
You did great, Gordon.
No. You got to stay here. All right. Just a fun story. A lot of great things go on in Dorothy's house, and they teach women how to sew and do all sorts of things that will enable them to earn a living. So when they go out on their own, they don't starve and don't have to beg and don't end up being abused again. Well, one of the skills and things that they teach is how to work in restaurants and coffee shops and that sort of thing. And there's a coffee shop inside of Dorothy's house that was funded and built by Starbucks. How about that? That's pretty awesome, isn't it? So, all right, Angela, and I have a question for you. I know you've been on trips to other countries before. You just recently came back from where?
Nicaragua.
Nicaragua. Awesome. Okay. But I know mission trips are different from that trip. So, what is one of the things that affected you the most about this trip you just took?
My previous trips have been with Habitat for Humanity, so a little bit of a different organization. Going with New Life for this has really helped build a stronger connection with all of you as part of the church, and that was a big reason why I started coming to this church in the first place. So if you're looking to build a stronger church foundation, come with us next year.
That's awesome. All right, Dan, I have a question for you. Well said. I'll pay you later. All right. So, Dan, I know this was not your first mission trip, right?
No, it's my second time through.
All right. And so what will you take from this trip?
I think the thing that struck me the most this time, which didn't last time, last time for me, it was really about building a house and building every kid's hope. But this time, it was much more about building relationships with the families
Wow.
and the church. And a little fellow named Giuliano, who was a young guy, probably 8 or 9 years old, who hung out at the job site all week. And he didn't have a really good family life, what Pastor Luis told us about. And he was always in the background, and I bonded with him. We spent the week together, and really grew. He really grew on my heart. And on the last night, we had 3 nights of kind of a worship at the church. And the first night he came, he was kind of hiding in the background, and Irma and Luis fed the whole community for all 3 nights. And so he wouldn't come up, so I encouraged him. I finally got him a plate of food and brought it to him, and slowly during the week he kind of came closer and closer. On Thursday night, we had the big Pizzole feed, and he jumped in line by himself. And his parents, who had never, ever been to the church, were off in the background and jumped in line. Jumped in line. And just to see the transformation of that young man. So for me, it wasn't about building a home. It was about building a relationship with this young guy.
Thank you, Dan. You can give that to Gordon. Something about building relationships gets down there. That's awesome. So Gordon, I know you didn't go on this trip, but you have been connected with this mission for more than 30 years. And here's something that I want all of us to know. It was Gordon who had the original vision to take New Life to Mexico, and he led our first trip. So let's hear it for Gordon. Thank you, Gordon. So even though you didn't go on this trip, I know you played a role. And so would you tell us what that role is, and then would you tell us what keeps you engaged with Mexico?
Okay. So I got addicted to missions in 1982. I was in a small village of Puerto País, Bolivia. I preached every night. I preached for a week in the church in the village next to it. And then we all came back into the big city of Santa Cruz for a crusade. And at the end of the crusade, a young woman stopped the bus that I was on, and she told everybody, I'm a Christian now. I'm born again because God sent Gordon McGee to Puerto País, Bolivia.
Yes! All right.
If the Lord was fishing for missionaries, that's when the hook was set, right? So as I raised 7 kids in Petaluma, I said, you cannot grow up thinking that this is how people live. You're all going to me twice before you get away from my house. And the place we went was San Quintin Valley. Started in 1991, built that relationship with YWAM. I went to another church for 10 years before this one. And my family got a lot out of it. The church was kind of a lazy church. And actually, it wasn't catching on for them. And I said, I'm so impressed by how well they do everything down there on purpose and with fire for Jesus and everything. Just observe. And then I sent that church and didn't go with them my last year there. And YWAM said, these people can never come here again. They are the laziest, worst excuse for people on a mission trip we've ever seen. That was not good. So I left that church. I came to New Life. The first year that I took New Life, Ron went with me to the orphanage, and YWAM called me up and said, these people can come anytime they want. They are the greatest, most wonderful servants we have. Yeah. Just keep bringing them. So we've been going ever since.
Yeah.
But so then I kind of, there was a couple in New Life who got excited about it, and I gave leadership over to them, and I started going to India with Ron and doing other things. And all those years later, but then when I retired, I kept hearing from these guys who were going, Jeff and Jim and Matt, and they're like, Pastor Luis, this friend of ours, blah, blah. And I said, well, maybe we can do something more with this guy. So I said, maybe I should go meet him. So I went down on a trip. First one in a pause of 15, 20 years or whatever, met Luis, and he had so much vision, but no one to help him realize it. So the Lord called me to come alongside of him, not to do just project management, but mentoring, and we boiled his 15 visions down to 2, La Puerta del Cielo Mission Church and Every Kid's Hope. And we began the projects and the plans and the fundraising. And now, 2 years later, the church and the house are done. And I'm about to start, as soon as Irma gives me the operating plan for Every Kid's Hope, we're going to start a fundraiser, and we're going to get the concrete work done. And then hopefully by next February, March, I'm taking a team of guys down to start building on Every Kid's Hope property. Hallelujah.
Amen.
That's good. So I know what keeps you engaged. Thank you. Let's hear it for these people. What a wonderful time. Thanks, guys. All right, are you ready for just a little bit of teaching? Here we go. Cast your eyes to the screen. We're going to take a look at 2 things that Jesus said to his followers. He said, "You are the salt of the earth." And he said, "You are the light of the world." Now, what those both have in common is they're both about influence. Salt has this wonderful capacity to bring out the best of whatever you put it on. And Jesus said, for those of us who are his followers, that's the way he wants us to be. Whatever organization he puts us into, he wants us to bring out the best in that organization. Whatever relationship that he puts us in, he wants us to bring out the best. I was just thrilled to hear Dan talk about Giuliano, weren't you? That was just so amazing because here's Dan, salt of the earth kind of guy, identifying with a 9 or a 10-year-old boy and literally bringing out the best in him. And it was so profound that his parents had to come and see. And who knows, it might be the beginning of something life-transforming for that whole family. Yeah. And then Jesus said, you're the light of the world. Now, light is always symbolic of things that are positive, things like hope and truth, right? And joy. That when people say, I see the light in your eyes, what they mean is you're not sad. They see happiness. They see a sparkle. And Jesus said, you are the light of the world. And he wanted it to be that wherever we went, we carried with us this context of love and hope and joy, this beautiful influence that would rub off on the people around us. And in some way, we work on those concepts every Sunday here at New Life so that we can increase our influence factor. We can up our influence game. And a while ago, Diva stood up here and said, every one of us is a leader. And it's true. Because every one of us exudes an influence on somebody, somewhere. Actually, many somebodies. And so one of the things we like to do at New Life is we like to invest in upping our influence game. And so we have hosted now, I think this will be our 8th year. Tim Shaley can correct me if I'm wrong, but in hosting this thing called Global Leadership Summit, it's huge, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, and it helps all of us up our influence game. And we have a special guest this morning all the way from Texas. He is a representative of the Global Leadership Summit. Would you welcome him to the stage?
I tell you what, it is, I'm just really hopeful that maybe at some point in the service, I'll sense that God is moving through New Life. I just haven't quite picked up on it just yet. Of course, you know I'm being very facetious. You know, Spike, where'd you go? I think if you practice just a little bit longer, maybe just give it a little bit more effort, you might make it one day. What an incredible beginning to this service. Thank you so much for that. Can I just also say that I am glad to be in California in your beautiful weather. And by the way, we have a guest artist also from the great Republic of Texas. So it's not an invasion of your state, but we are trying to balance out the fact that you're sending so many people to Texas. We have 2 of us today, maybe more than that. From the great state of Texas. We're trying to balance things out. But I'm just glad to be here. I walked outside this morning, 55 crisp degrees. And you guys are like, oh, that's normal. No, I've been living in 106, 107 degree weather in Texas. I don't know whether the state's ever going to fall off into the ocean like they say. I'm just glad you're here right now because it has been a blessing this morning. I have a question for you. Oh, can I say one more thing before I forget? I am going to take your succession strategy around the country as I'm talking to other churches. This is a brilliant strategy that you have with Pastor Shane coming on. I've never seen any other church in the United States of America do this strategy, but to hire someone who looks exactly like the former pastor is brilliant. It's brilliant. Seriously, brilliant, brilliant. The people that only come like one Sunday a month, they're never going to know anything changed. That's brilliant. My question for you this morning is, how important is leadership? How important is it? Someone has said that everything rises and falls on leadership. I'm not sure whether you've noticed, but our world seems to be crying out for a better brand of leadership. We are given and really bombarded with examples of bad leadership all the time, and sometimes it becomes so overwhelming that it's paralyzing. We throw up our hands and we say, out of exacerbation, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing that I can do to change this. Is that true? Is there really nothing that you can do? Can you imagine with me for a moment if everyone's leadership in the world just increased by 5%? Just by 5%. What kind of impact would that have in your world, in our world that we collectively steward? What difference would it make in the city of Petaluma? What difference would it make in your home and in your business? What if the collective tide of the New Life leadership rose by just 5%? What greater impact would you have in this city? What if your leadership rose by 5%? What greater impact would you have with your family, with those that you lead in your business? You see, someone has said that you are the hardest person that you will ever lead. You are the hardest person that you will ever lead. Great leadership begins with a commitment to grow, not only to help other people be better, but to help yourself get better, because the stakes of leadership are higher than they've ever been. Now, I know what some of you are saying to yourself. You're saying, oh, Pastor West, listen to me. I'm not a leader, all right? I don't stand on stage and do what that very handsome guy does every single week and proclaim the gospel message. He told me to say that. I don't do that, so I'm not a leader. I don't teach a Bible study class. I don't lead a company. I don't do anything like that. I'm not a leader. I'm not on the usher team. I don't ush, so I'm not a leader in that regard either. And I would tell you that is simply not the truth. Because as John Maxwell has taught us over the years, leadership, has already been stated today, is about influence. And every single one of us, whether we're a stay-at-home mom or we're leading a Fortune 500 company, whether we're a young person in college or in high school, or whether we're of the retired age, every single one of us lead and influence someone. I love what a pastor friend of mine recently said. He said, everyone deserves to be led well. Everyone deserves to be led well. I really like that. Everyone deserves to be led well. And in order for that to become a reality, we must grow as leaders. We must take the responsibility to steward the kingdom of God and to be a significant leader in the kingdom. We must steward that well. Someone had told me one time there are basically 4 ways to grow as a leader. First of all, read everything you can on leadership. Second of all, go where leadership is taught. That's why being a part of this church is so important. That's why attending things like the Global Leadership Summit really matters. Number 3, interact with other leaders who are further down the leadership journey than you and ask well thought out questions. And then 4, and this is probably one of the greatest ways to learn how to lead something, and that is to lead something. You're going to learn an incredible amount when you step forward and take on the mantle of leadership. This is exactly why the Global Leadership Summit exists. You see, the summit is more than just an event to attend. It is a strategic tool to leverage. It is a catalyst for transformation. It's a resource to be leveraged for not only community impact and organizational impact, but also for your personal impact. When people are encouraged and they're equipped in their leadership skills, we have found over the course of time that they have a thriving personal and professional life that not only provides more meaning and purpose for them personally, but also empowers the best in everyone around them. We cultivate the very best faculty we can in any given year, and I think on the side screens, the faculty slide will show we have people like Dr. Condoleezza Rice, people like Patrick Lencioni, people like Craig Gershell, Dallas Jenkins, who is the producer of the Chosen series. It will be at the Global Leadership Summit this year. It is an incredible faculty, and we cultivate this faculty on purpose to help us learn the very best leadership practices we can in any given year to have a transformational impact in our daily lives. We believe that armed with enough humility, you can learn from anyone. Pastors can learn from business leaders can learn from educators can learn from civic and nonprofit leaders, and business leaders can learn from pastors. Armed with enough humility, we can learn from anyone. The summit is also an incredible opportunity for you to leverage to invite those who are spiritually seeking. It is a spiritually safe place for you to invite your friends and your relatives, your coworkers, to be engaged in quote, church in a way that maybe they've never experienced before. I promise you, if you will take that step of faith with those whom God has planted and placed in your heart, that it will tee up a spiritually significant conversation for you in the days that follow. Many of us send our kids to Christian summer camp, right? Because we want them to get out of the norm, get off all the gadgets we've bought them, get off the television, all that kind of stuff, watching YouTube, the whole deal. We want to put them in an environment where they will radically encounter a radical God who loves them and cares for them. Well, the truth of the matter is, the Global Leadership Summit is kind of like summer camp for adults, except you get to eat your own food and sleep in your own bed. It's like the full meal deal there. The summit creates space for God to show up. And I don't know about you, but anytime that I've created space for God to show up, He has always shown up. So I want you in your mind's eye right now, and some of you may need to close your eyes. Now don't go to sleep like it's Pastor Ron preaching, but in your mind's eye, think about the people in your life. Think about your spouse, your kids, your boss, your coworkers, your employees. And as you have those people in your mind's eye, think about the influence that you have in their life. Let me ask you this question. Those people you're thinking about right now, of that group of people, who do you not want to get better? Everyone wins when a leader gets better. Every person you have in your mind's eye, if you will invite them, encourage them, invest in them, they will get better as a leader. And we all win when we get better as leaders. So I'm asking you to invite everyone you know to the summit right here at New Life, August 3 and 4, Thursday and Friday. The live simulcast will be sent to over 500 locations across the United States. We'll be in 250 prisons, about 100 what we call ministry connects. So these are like halfway houses, battered women's shelters, that sort of thing. And then eventually it's translated into about 60 different languages, and international summits are held around the world, reaching about 350,000 people through what you'll experience live in August. You can see not only the faculty, but in the card or in the seat next to you, there is a card that has a QR code. If you would take your phone out and shoot that QR code, it'll take you to a registration page that is uniquely built for New Life for you to register at a discounted rate. We want to encourage you to take advantage of that right now as we're kicking off the registration process for the Global Leadership Summit. Again, August 3 and 4, Thursday and Friday. I personally want to also thank Pastor Ron and the New Life team for your vision, for your willingness to put the serving towel over your arm and not only serve those that call New Life their home, but also to serve the greater community. I know this community has such a significant impact and space in your heart. So thank you very much for leading out in this. And I also want to say in the closing words, you spend a lot of time investing in other people. You know, as a dad, we spend a lot of time trying to fix things for our kids and make their life a little bit easier and solving problems and doing all of these things. As a spouse, you're serving one another. As an employee or an employer, you're doing those kinds of things. But in the process, what happens often is that you neglect your own self. You're the hardest person you'll ever lead. So I'm asking you to carve out these 2 days out of the 365 that God allows us to invest in yourself. Why? Because everyone wins when your leadership gets better.
So here's what I think this could look like at New Life. Thank you, Wesley. Wasn't that well said? That was tremendous. I know that taking a Thursday and a Friday off from work for many of you is a significant sacrifice. But I want you to prayerfully consider doing it. Imagine what could happen in our church. We have a new lead pastor coming. He will be here less than a month before the summit happens, okay? Imagine what could happen for him and for our church if 60 to 70 of us said, I'm going to take those days off. I'm going to come. We're going to get some common training, and we are going to, all of us, up our influence game as we welcome our new pastor and we launch our church into its next chapter. Could you get on board with that? I think that would be awesome. That would be absolutely awesome. So, you have the cards. Takes you right to our website. You can register there. The discounted price is good from today through next Sunday, the Sunday after that, and a couple of days after that. But if you register today, you got it done. All right? I'm registered, I'm going, and I'm not even going to be on the staff by then. I'm going as a volunteer, but I still want to be a person of influence. Okay. We want to close our service this morning with something that the earliest churches, led by the apostles that Jesus trained, those earliest churches, when they gathered on Sundays, the central part of their service was a thing called communion. It was not a formality that people went through. It wasn't like if you didn't take communion somehow and you died, you went to hell. It wasn't that. But in the earliest churches, there was this wonderful realization that everything that God makes available to us, He makes available to us through Jesus. And when Jesus came, He came with this wonderful context of love for every single person, of genuine care for the people who had been marginalized, and a firm belief that if they would just get to know God and walk with Him, that God could make of them anything He wanted to. It was the grandest story filled with good news from start to finish. And no wonder. Because in a story we're all familiar with, before Jesus was born, here was what an angel said to some curious shepherds. The angel said to them, "Don't be afraid. I'm here with good news and great joy that is meant for whom? Everyone worldwide."